Episode 231 of the HHH Racing Podcast is brought to you by Crown's Way Racing. They have shares that start at $500, no monthly bills, no maintenance or purchase fees. You get paddock and winner's circle access. They scored at over 17% in 2022 with over 55% in the money. They have two fantastic trainers in Carlos Silva and Kelsey Danner, and Kelsey Danner will be on the show with us tonight. They race the Mid-Atlantic, Florida, Louisiana, and Midwest, and they've had previous great successes with stakes winner Smokin' Jay and an upcoming horse called Otago. Be a part of Crown's Way Racing. Please contact President Tony Rollo, who will be with us on the show in part 2 tonight. You can see the information down below the video player and also on the screen. We're very excited to have Crown's Way Racing as our sponsor tonight and find out how to buy a fantastic horse race or horses through Crown's Way Racing in part 2 tonight at approximately 45 minutes into the show, or if you're watching live at approximately 8:45 Eastern Standard Time tonight. And now, let's start episode 231 of the HHH Racing Podcast.
If you have not followed his Triple H Horse Racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Hello and welcome to episode 231 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your proud host, Howard Kravitz. What an incredible show we have tonight. I can't wait to tell you all about it. But before I do that, please make sure you hit that subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. After you do that, hit the notification bell so you know when new content will arise, and smash that like button as well, which will send a lot of people on YouTube to this channel. And of course, you can reach me on Twitter. You can see right below at the bottom of the screen, right there, at H Kravitz. Guys, I'm only a few followers away from 1,300. If you follow me, if you are on Twitter, please make sure you you follow me so we can cross that 1,300 mark. I'd really appreciate it. On the bottom of the screen, you can also see scrolling my email, hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. And the next live show, you see it right there, will be next Wednesday, the 22nd, 9 p.m. Eastern. Bettin and Boozin, Kyle Roscoe does a fantastic job as the host. You can, of course, listen to this on podcasts like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. Our power picks are fantastic. Look below the video player, $2.59 ROI in 2022. It's only $4 every Saturday. Again, if you're not taking advantage of it, you are losing money. Only $4 every Saturday. Look below the video player for our fantastic tip sheet. And of course, we have a great website as well, created by our awesome co-host, Pete Visco, hhhracingpodcast.com. Now, let me tell you what's happening tonight. We have a two-part episode tonight. The first 45 minutes, we're going to be talking exclusively about the fantastic card at the Fairgrounds this Saturday. It's Risen Stars Stakes. It's the first 50-point Kentucky Derby prep. They also have many other stakes. The late pick 5 is all stakes, and it is fantastic. And we'll be covering it like a glove right here until approximately 8:45 Eastern if you're watching live. If you're watching this as a replay, or if you're listening on audio later on and you are only interested about part 2, you want to fast forward approximately 45 minutes or so. At that point, we're going to have President of Crown's Way Racing, Tony Rollo, who has been on before. He's going to be on a second time tonight with a fantastic opportunity to buy racehorses at a very low cost. Not only that, fantastic trainer Kelsey Danner will be right here live on the show to talk about some of her fantastic horses with Crowns Way Racing and talk about her philosophy. And then also later, Scott Hazelton, fantastic announcer, paddock host, analyst with Keeneland and, of course, with FanDuel. He was on today. He'll be on tonight, Scott Hazelton. So we have a fantastic show about everything about horse racing, from handicapping to ownership. This is an absolute must show. You want to stay with it the entire time. Will be about an hour and 15 minutes long. So hang with us for sure. If you're watching this as a replay, or if you're listening on audio, please pick those specific spots that you want to hear and listen to. This is a very highly anticipated show. I can't wait to bring it to you. All right, so those are all the promos. Let's jump right in right now. We have our great co-host waiting for us. Want to make sure we're all set. Looks like we're all set to go. Let's bring him on live from Maryland, Mr. Pete Visco. Pete, Risen Star Stakes, baby. We got a huge card coming up Saturday.
I love it. Let's get to Fairgrounds. Let's finally get a track with a nice long stretch. We can maybe get some closers home. Sounds right to me.
Real quick, I know we have a big show with Pete. Very exciting day. Selfishly for me, crushed it at Gulfstream. And again, Pete, sometimes you have to be selfish and you have to promote your own show, obviously. We had Miguel Clement on several weeks ago, Pete, and the horse he tipped out the most, like the horse he loved. And Miguel Clement never says he loves horses. He's a pretty modest guy. Of course, he's the assistant to Christophe Clement and, of course, his son. Tipped out a horse called Love Appeals. This was several weeks ago. He tipped it out. That horse ran today in race 1. It's a maiden. It's a 3-year-old filly by Speightstown. It was 7.5 furlongs. Pete, this horse was 2-1. Somehow drifted up to 7-2. Rosario gave her a great ride. And I know anyone listens to the show and follows the show, including yourself, of course, cashed out big on Love Appeals today.
Yeah, it's always nice when somebody, especially because it wasn't like, hey, the race is coming up in 2 days, so let me talk about this horse. It was just out of all the horses they're dealing with, that was one of the ones that he mentioned specifically. So when that happens, luckily you remembered. Luckily you had a snow day and you were home and you were concentrating on your work, but a little bit dab on horses. So that all paid off in the end. So thank you, Miguel. Thank you, Howard, and thanks to all the connections of that horse who ran a great race on debut. It was excellent. Nice ride by Joel for once too.
A great ride. He's been a bit cold. Ralph Conti, it's all stakes. Ralph Conti's so we got Vale Place. Hello, boys. What's up, Vale? We got Dien here. $100 doesn't seem to be a sufficient budget for pick 5 of this card. I don't know, Dien. We're going to talk about that. I think we can get away with that. But no, everything worked out great today, and the Clement stable. I mean, they never work horses fast, Pete. I know we're going to move on, but it's nice to have a little bit inside intel. I don't always have inside intel, everyone out there. So please don't email me every time a Clement horse is running. But that particular one was not just a tip for you and I, Pete. He gave it out to the world.
I mean, you just have to pay attention on the show. And the good thing is you have to stable a horse like that up. So if it's a horse that's not running immediately, you put it in your stable, whether you use Equibase, whatever TVG, whatever one you use, stable the horse up. You'll know when it's running, and then you can cash in and not miss it and be upset after the fact.
Absolutely. I actually don't even have my own stable. I gotta take care of that. I just write things down old school.
Trust me, I have horses pop up where I'm like, I don't even remember why the hell I stabled this horse. It was years ago. I don't even know if I like it anymore, but it still tells me when they're working out or when they're running. So
there you go. Well, it all worked out. Those of you wondering, where's Paul Halloran? Paul has basketball games tonight. As you know, he's a referee. He said he might join us. If he joins us the next 5 minutes, he'll be with us. If not, he will not. But we do have his picks. Everyone at home who's interested in Paul Halloran's picks, I do have them up, Pete. All right, Pete, let's get started. Late pick 5, and we're going to go a little more quickly today because we have 2 parts to our show. So let's go ahead and bring it up. Late pick 5. At Fairgrounds. Of course, it's highlighted by the Risen Star, huge Kentucky Derby prep. By far, Pete, the best one we've had so far. I think we'd all agree. It's also 14 horses, but we got plenty of time to talk about that race. Let's start with race 9. Race 9, as you can see on the screen, is the Colonel Power Stakes. Now, the weather is going to be, they are supposed to get some rain today. It's going to be a lot colder. A cold front's coming through, but it will be dry tomorrow and Saturday. So, Pete, this is absolutely going to be on the turf. It might not be firm turf, but it's going to be on the turf for sure. This is a 5.5 furlong. You see the rails out. It's always out there because of the issues they've had. $100,000 is the purse. Let me refresh this because you don't see the morning lines on here. And now we do. There you go. Magic. And that's not the right. I got to go one more.
I was going to say, I
There
don't
we go.
recognize any of those horses.
No, they're like, what's that? All right, now, Pete, there's a lot of also eligibles, and I've got some inside intel, so we're going to talk about this. They go down to 14 horses with what? 6 also eligibles. You see the main body of the field. The Moorline favorite is the number 8 Surveillance, a horse we've talked about on this show for DeSormo and Graham. And before I show the PPs, I don't even know if you know this, Pete. The number 2, Twirling Roses, is out for sure. The number 2, Twirling Roses, is out, which means the number 9, Evan Singh, Pete, will be in the race for sure. Who else will be in? I have absolutely no freaking idea. Let me go ahead to our banners, Pete, so we can show everyone our picks there. And there we go. Of course, you see Paul's picks also.
When you see my banner, you know that I saw the same tweet that I think you might have retweeted, Chad.
Yep.
And that was, I'm glad he put that out before we did the picks, because that's actually, we'll get to it, but that's a horse that I liked and I wished was in the race and now actually got in.
Chad Schexnader has been on the show. They have a great podcast.
Yes.
I recommend you guys check it out. It's only an audio podcast. They talk a lot about works. They talk about some exciting races earlier in the card that we're not going to cover. Anyway, it's a great podcast, the Fairgrounds podcast with Chad Schexnader. Anyway, Pete, you're going to go with Surveillance here, who has been unbelievable on the dirt. He looks like he could probably run okay on turf. I'm not 100% positive, but he is by far the sharpest in this field.
Yeah, I don't love the horse. Like, I loved this horse last time out, and I think we did that race on the show. I know we did one of those last 2 wins on one of the shows, and this is just a horse. This is more of a form play where at least he has turf form, so you've seen him on the turf, so it's not completely new to him, and he's just in such good form right now, and from a figure and form standpoint, he's in such good shape that he's just hard to leave off the ticket. Whether you like him as your top choice, that's okay. I mean, again, this is for a sequence, so he's 1 or 2 for me with we'll talk about the 9, but it's a horse that it's just hard to leave off because he's just running so well right now.
Well, and he's out of a mizzen masked mare, so you'd figure he could handle turf, but they've only raced him 3 times on turf, which always makes me a little bit shady. I don't know. We'll see. Now, you and I both like the 9. I've got the 9 second. So do you. And this horse gets in the race. I'm not a big fan of deep closers, but Fairgrounds turf is one of those turf courses where you can close. And I think there's enough speed to set up this stall trainee for Flavian Pratt, by the way, coming to ride this card off a layoff.
Yeah, and this is a horse that I've liked multiple times. And again, whenever you're reliant on a deep closer, it's problematic because you need so much to happen for them to get in the race and for them to get the proper trip. In this case, I think there is potential for some speed up front. And one of these times, and hopefully now that Flavian is on, one of these times this horse is going to maybe not be in dead last or second to last and maybe can get a little closer, hopefully something closer to that trip 3 back where maybe just got going a little earlier. So maybe you could be in the back, but just start a little earlier. And here, if we get some pace up front, I like this one. Hopefully we can get a little bit of a price too.
Yeah. Now, I've got the 10 in here and the 13. And I handicap this race, Pete, as if some of the also eligibles will get in. Now, I don't have any intel other than the 2 being out. So I will talk about some other horses here in just a second, but the 10 is the best speed in my opinion. I know he's off a layoff. I know this is 5.5, but Pete, my general feeling about this race, and we're going to move on here in just a second, is I want some fresh faces. I don't want some of these horses that have been, racing over and over again. I mean, you go through the field, Surveillance can win. Obviously, I'm going to use them depending on what the also eligibles get in. I don't know what to do with Anguston, who's off a huge layoff, but when he's right, he's really good. So I'm going to use him also, depending on, again, who gets in. I don't like Manuwa in this spot. I don't like Yankee 7. I don't really like Pyron. All in Sync, who you have third, is interesting and has a big number, but he looks like a dead closer to me. So I don't know about that. And the 2 is out. And then the 1 is okay for Mark Cassidy. So I guess what I want to say here in general, Pete, is I'm not a huge fan of the main body of the field, and I'm just hoping some of the also eligibles get in. I mean, that's
I
key for
like
me.
I'm with you on the 10. If the 10 got in, plus I think if you like the 9, I think the 10 getting in helps that as well, because then you're just adding another pace presence, and especially one from the outside where if that 10 gets in, he's got to go. I mean, that's all he does. So
Yeah.
he's going to go. There's some inside pace as well. So I think from the 9 and the 3, they'd actually benefit with the 10 getting in. But now you're also adding another horse who can win the race. And if he gets on the lead, can beat this field wire to wire. So I'm with you. I would add the 10. I didn't handicap any of the AEs except for the 9 Evan Sink. Just
Well,
so
on
that's
the
why
bottom
I
of the
didn't have
screen,
one.
I probably put the 8. I probably put the 1, 7, and 8 somewhere along with the 9 in my top 3, just to let everyone know.
Yeah.
I don't know what order. It depends on scratches. Michael Austin, give me some heat tonight already. There's no way the 13 draws in. Michael, I think some of the main body horses, Pete, to me, are only going to run if it's on dirt. I'm just guessing. Michael, that's the only reason why I think the 13 could get in. I think some of those horses in the main body, Pete, are sort of better on dirt. So anyway, we have no idea. We're going to move on to the next race, but it's a spread race, I think, for me, and I'm sure it'll be for Pete also. Let's go to race 10. You see it on the bottom of the screen. This is, by the way, that last race was not a graded stake. I don't believe this one is. It's
just a regular stake.
Yeah, it's a grade 3 mine shaft, and Pete, I'm really looking forward to this race. It's for older males. It's $250,000 is the purse. They're going a mile and a 16th. We see some familiar faces that we've talked about before on the show, especially a month ago when some of these horses ran against each other, including Run Classic and Happy American and Mr. Wireless. You see this is a field of 9. The morning line favorite here is a soft favorite, the number 6, Happy American, who won last time for Pessin and James Graham. I believe I had this horse on top last time. I think you liked this horse too. I can't recall if you had him on top. You did. But this time you are sticking with, not this time anything, you're sticking with Happy American one more time.
Yeah, again, I hate to be a broken record. This one is just in tip-top form since that layoff where it stopped running in March after the New Orleans and then came back in November, has basically done nothing wrong. Even that race 3 back just was so far back that still ran a fantastic race and isn't a horse that needs to be 14 lengths back. So I appreciated that one and then went right into, hey, let's win a stakes race convincingly. Beat Mr. Wireless, beat Forza Dioro, who's some quality horses. And then let's go into Louisiana. Let's do the same thing. And even closing into a pretty soft pace too, which I like. And here, I think it's set up for, there's at least 3 horses with plus 100 time form early pace figures. Hopefully we can get a little bit more pace up front. And if it does, I think it sets up for this 6 pretty well.
We're not going to be showing quite as many replays tonight. As everyone knows, you can't directly click through, and we have many things to discuss tonight. Happy American closed the best of anyone in that last race. It was a very slow pace, Pete. I like Happy American. I've got him second here, but there are some new shooters coming in that did not run in Louisiana stakes last time against Happy American, and one of them I like quite a bit here. The number 3 Tawny Port. You know, Pete, I was always a bit of a fan of this horse. He got really good earlier in the summer. As I go full screen, you can see he actually raced very well in the Kentucky Derby, although we all know the pace collapsed. Won the Ohio Derby on June 25th, beating White Barrio and Classic Causeway. Ran a huge race in the Jim Dandy against Epicenter, and then tailed off in the Pennsylvania Derby. This is a newly turned 4-year-old, Pete. And the way he runs, he looks like he's a big horse. I think he's going to be better as he gets older. And he was good last year. With normal maturity from 3 to 4, I see no reason why he can't run a race in the mid upper 90s, if not even a low 100, if he's that good. He has tactical speed. I think he's going to set a great trip. I would let price be your guide in terms of the win end, but I'm absolutely using him as an A. I'm also using Happy American as an A. And I want to talk about the number 5, Big Blue Line, who's my price in this race. This is usually, Pete, a horse I'd be against because everyone's like, Howard, where did that big number come from? I love when horses start showing a different dimension, Pete. This is, again, a newly turned 4-year-old who was mainly a speed horse if you look at him last year, but he's learning how to settle and finish. Obviously, this is a much tougher field, but that 97 buyer is legit. He blew by those horses, granted with a perfect trip. This is the one sort of fuzzy that I'd be interested in a little bit. Big Blue Line as my third choice. Before we move on to the next race, you have the 3 third. Why don't you talk a little about Pyre Medina, who I'm going to use very defensively. I've never been a huge fan of this horse, but he did run his best race last time at Gulfstream against Skippy long stocking in the prep for the Pegasus.
Yeah, I like this one. I think this one, and you could see 4 out of 5 in the money at the mile and a 16th. I think this one might be at this distance, might be right where it sits. But it's similar to what you said about Tawnyport. This one now is a newly turned 4-year-old, ended the year pretty strong against that race 2 back. There wasn't much in it. But I don't necessarily care about that because it was coming off 3 clunkers. It was just nice to see the horse run well, get a win, get a nice buyer, then steps up, goes into a grade 3, and Skippy Longstocking is a pretty solid horse. So there's no knock by losing to that horse, and then gets the win. And on the top, and I don't think this horse is, I'd rather see this horse just sitting off a little bit, which I think is going to happen here. So again, if you're taking that natural progression from 3 to 4, and now you can even improve on that 103 or even just stay consistent with that, that's tops in this field. And this is a horse that has run some quality races, was just up against it in some of those fields. I just think this might be a good spot. I like Saez. Saez will be aggressive, hopefully not super aggressive to where this horse is on the lead, but at least just sitting right off that pack of speed.
Yeah, the main question for me is, can he pass quality horses? He's not really shown he can do that, but we'll see. We have a lot of people watching live. We really appreciate everyone watching. We have a ton of people in the chat. I'm not going to be able to respond to as many comments in the chat tonight, ladies and gentlemen, but don't let that dissuade you from making comments, because we love to see the banter back and forth. Tom Espinoza likes Mr. Wireless, who, Pete, this all Mr. Wireless does is runs very well. I think this is a tougher spot than last time, but there's no reason he can't get in the money again. So there's a lot of ways to go. We didn't even talk about Hoist the Gold, Pete, from the rail real quick, just 20 seconds. Your thoughts on Hoist the Gold stretching out? He's faced some very good horses.
Yeah, to me, I had this horse as more of an underneath type. There was the stretch out I didn't love, even though I think the breeding suggests the extra distance should be no problem.
Yeah.
I did have a small sample size stat. Dallas Stewart was 0 for 8 in graded stakes races going sprinter route. So it's just maybe one where I like this horse and I wish it was in a different spot maybe than I think I'd like it. I think it's going against some experienced routers here, and it might be just a little too tough for them, but definitely at a little bit of a price, because there's not a big favorite here to have this horse in second, third, if it can get the trip from the rail.
Yeah, why not? He's going to get a seemingly a very good trip from the inside.
He doesn't like to win. He's 2 for 16. He's not necessarily a winning. He doesn't generally win. So a horse who doesn't win and going to routing against a pretty tough field, that's tough for me on the win end. That's all.
True.
That's all I'll say about that one.
Absolutely. Let's go to race 11, Pete. This is the third leg of an extremely good pick 5. This is the Fairgrounds Stakes. This is a distance turf race, 150,000 in the kitty. They're going about a mile and 1/8. We do see a bunch of horses again that raced about a month ago, and we previewed that on this show with, again, some fresh faces, some horses coming off the layoffs. The morning line favorite here, it's a very soft morning line, is the number 2 Emmys for Robertson and James Graham. Barely lost last time. Definitely a horse speed that I've had a yin-yang relationship with for many reasons. I'll talk about him on the Power Picks tip sheet a little more often. But you are going with the number 4, Gentle Soul, who beat 2 Emmys last time, and you're going right back with him.
Yeah, I'm going to come back. This was a tough one for me. I didn't have a super strong opinion. I like this horse again. I generally like improvement. This horse came back in the first race of the year, popped a lifetime buyer top at 6 years old, which is pretty impressive when they do that. Beat 2 Emmys, who's the other horse that I like in the race. So I figure it was a solid trip. I didn't think there was anything sort of weak about him winning that race. So I'm going to come back and just sort of play him right on top. I do like Calhoun. I had 38% wins in stakes dirt routes at Fairgrounds. Now, obviously, this one is the first time in graded stakes, so it's a bit of a step up. But hopefully, if he can run that a similar figure to last time, I think he's got a pretty solid shot. And I guess that's why he's the favorite. So I'm not breaking any ground there. By the way, Michael had some digs to you. I don't know if you saw it for Tiz the Bomb. I don't know if you saw that earlier in the
Oh, I
comments.
saw it. We'll talk about Tiz the Bomb, Michael. Everyone loves just giving us a little crap. That's
You got
quite
to
all
throw
right.
a dig in every
We
once in a
love
while.
our viewers and listeners. I don't know where the 99 came from, but I'll tell you
No.
what. If as a 6-year-old, this is an angle I don't like. I mean, there's horses that improve, Pete, and you think, wow, they're just on their way up. Maybe this horse is. I mean, he's only raced on turf 5 times, so maybe Calhoun's just figured this one out. He ran legitimately big against Tuami's last time and beat him. So maybe he's just improving. You would think the extra distance would be fine. I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't. And Raylu is on again. So he does pick up 4 pounds for those of you that are handicap pound people. I'm personally not in general, but he does pick up some weight. I'm using him. Obviously, I've got him second. Pete, let me talk about Tuami's. Now, this horse, geez, what a relationship I've had with this horse. So my first, I guess, dislike listen, the connections are great. I got no problem with the human connections. I have no problem with the horse, obviously. But when he won the Mr. D Stakes here, August 14th, 2021, which was basically the last Arlington Million, they changed the name. I don't even want to get into it. Remember this race, Pete? He absolutely walked the dog 52-116 and beat Domestic Spending, who looked like, who was an absolute superstar at that point. But you know what? This horse has backed that up. I mean, you see he's run some 2 other 100 buyers. He ran again in the Munez Memorial with a 102 and wired the field. He obviously loves Fairgrounds. He's 8 for 10 in the money at Fairgrounds. I was against him last time, and even though he lost, Pete, I have to say I was wrong because he ran another huge race. The pace was slow, but the pace is often slow at the Fairgrounds. He was coming off a long layoff. He was 7. He ran fantastic against Gentle Soul. And you know what, Pete? He should only be sharper. He likes longer distance to me. There's not a lot of pace. I think he's the obvious favorite here. I would love to get 3-1. I think he's going to be more like 9-5, but what the hell do I know? Because sometimes I'm wrong about what prices. I think this is the clear horse to beat, in my opinion, in this race.
No, I agree with you. And by the way, I always hated this horse because I had the cross country pick 5 that day, and I thought it was locked up when you're relying on Domestic Spending to close it out. And there were 2. I had a $20 horse, I think, in there to start it, and I was counting the money. And this stupid horse goes and runs as slow as possible and beats.
Sorry, Hugh Robertson. We really do like the horse. We just were better. Sorry,
I apologize. Hugh. Yes, I don't hate the horse now, but the one thing I do like, and I think every point you made was correct, and I do like that in the last 2 showed a different dimension. And it wasn't like didn't drop down to claiming 20 and close from off the pace, but ran against, a couple stakes races, some solid horses, and was able to come off the pace. So maybe isn't as reliant on being on the top like he used to be. So just having that to me is pretty good. Although it's funny because there's not a ton of speed here. So I wonder if he'll actually just sort of inherit the lead just based on the fact that he can do it when he needs to. But I'm with you. This is probably the horse to beat. So I have nothing against anything you said with this horse. And English Channel horses, they tend to get better as they get older, and they seem to hold their age well. So I feel like this could be a good year for this horse.
And Pete, we are thinking very similar in this spot. We have a fresh face for Maker, who I've heard is pretty good stretching out turf horses. I'm sure you're thinking the same thing. I was just looking for someone that's sort of, again, new, fresh face. I'm really not interested in Corelli. Someone was Tom Espinosa asking about Corelli. I mean, I think Corelli's like a 3-turn horse. I don't know. He's just a real plotter to me. I suppose Corelli, the number 7, can do something. This horse is getting better. Bay Street money, stretching out for Maker. He's out of a Dynaformer mare by Street Sense. He's an up and comer. I'm not sure about the Fairgrounds turf for this horse or the stretch out, but you could do worse at 6-1. I actually think the price might be higher than that on this one.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping for. I mean, again, this is one that you're sort of going with form, but you don't know about the class hike. He's stepping way up. But again, ever since he got in the maker barn, it's been pretty good. Even that last race, the loss, you can't hold it against. The distance seems to be fine. I did have one negative stat on this one. Maker 0 for 14 wins, 2 for 14 in the money in graded stakes races on dirt at Fairgrounds. So take that what you want, but
Did you
it's
say
nice
on dirt? Did you say on dirt?
on dirt, yeah, on dirt. Graded
Oh,
stakes on dirt at Fairgrounds.
okay.
Yes.
Well, it's a turf
Oh, this is
race.
turf. So maybe I meant to.
Hey,
Yeah, I don't know. What
Pete had a house fail. That doesn't help. That doesn't
That's a
happen too
host fail.
often.
Unless it is turf, and I just typed it wrong. I have to check
Okay,
it. So
we'll take a
I'll
look.
check it. Yeah.
If I don't mention Tis the Bomb, Michael Austin's going to be
yes,
on
you
my
have
ass
to do Tis
the next
Bomb.
half
I'll
an
check
hour.
that. Yeah.
I was teasing with Michael Austin, actually on the chat, or maybe it was through Twitter. I can't remember. He thinks this horse will be like third choice. I don't know why this horse is 9-2. Like, what has this horse done to deserve the 9-2? I think this horse should be like 10-1. I don't get it. The Hall of Fame was not a strong race. I guess he's a new 4-year-old who's improving. So if you like that angle, I mean, I do like that angle, but this horse really hasn't done much for me. I know he was a good 2-year-old and he almost won he was great in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but last year, I don't know. This was a horse that was people had very strong opinions one way or the other. I've been in the negative camp with him. He's off a long layoff. I don't know. I suppose he can win though. He's talented. I've never been a fan of this horse.
I love this horse. No, I love this horse as a horse, and it just disappoints me more often than not. So in this one, I was completely against.
Yeah.
So I assume that means he will definitely win. By the way, just to reiterate, that stat was on the turf. I just typed it in my notes wrong. Apologies.
Okay.
But it was the right stat. But yeah, I have to. And plus, even Tis the Bomb, when he's right, his figures are low for the top end of this field. So he's going to still have to. He's going to have to improve his form and move forward onto what his best is in order to beat this field. So he's hard to come up with here. Yeah. I hope he's 9-2. I hope some of those other, ones float up a bit. Yeah, I hope so.
I'm using him as a C, everyone. Pete, let's go on the Rachel Alexander. Now this race has probably the horse of the day. That people have been buzzing about this horse. I believe she was 11-1 in the KDFW, the Kentucky Derby Future Wagers. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, I'm sorry. This is ridiculous money coming in on this horse. She's very talented. We all know who we're talking about. She's in the Rachel Alexander. It's a grade 3. This is Oaks, Kentucky Oaks prep race. Of course, it's for 3-year-old fillies. $300,000, a mile to 16th. And the horse we're referring to is the number 2, Who's Your Filly, for Amos and Morales, who's just run off the screen time and time again. But her buyers certainly do not lay over the field. In fact, they forget about laying over the field, Pete. They're slower than some horses in this field. And you are going to try to beat her. You are going, as is Paul. I'm sorry, you're not.
No.
We are both going Who's Your Filly. Paul is going with, boy, he loves Chop Chop, but Paul cannot get off of the Chop Chop love. We are going with Who's Your Filly, who, in my mind, Pete, will not be 6-5. This horse is going to be.
This morning line was
3-5.
Ridiculous, right? This morning line was ridiculous. I was like, if this horse is 6-5, you take that, you go to the bank, whether you like her or not, you have to like her. I was with you. I hadn't really paid attention to her buyers until I started looking at this race and was surprised. But again, if you look at the race, I mean, especially I watched the replay of the last one again this morning. That horse, I mean, she was so geared down. Who knows if she could have run something? Exactly. I mean, I'm sure she has a lot more in the tank. And if you look at those works, I mean, these works are unbelievable. So she is coming in tip-top form. You assume that the growth from 2 to 3 and the improvement from 2 to 3, she could potentially be a monster. So if she can't beat this field, this field isn't great. If she can't beat this field, I don't care. She shouldn't even be the favorite for the Oaks. If you can't handle this field, I don't care what the circumstances are.
Now she is Triple Crown nominated. You see this,
yeah.
And so that's why she's also nominated to the
fourth choice. Yeah,
she is nominated to the Louisiana Derby. Everyone. So I don't know if they're going to go there against the boys next month, but she is nominated for it. So it's possible that they're going to run her in that race and just see what happens. And if she gets points for the Kentucky Derby, maybe she'll go. I think that'd be a mistake as of right now, but I guess we don't know. to me, Pete, Chop Chop just had no excuses last time. I guess if you want to say the layoff, okay. We both had the Owls look on top. I
Yeah,
saw the 88 buyer. I was like, that seems a little high for me, Pete. It didn't look like an
felt high.
88. She's got blinkers on. I mean, she, obviously, to me, she's the second choice in this race. I'm not really a fan of any others here, but I have her as a C only. I have no B's, and I'm going to have Hoosier Phillies an A. I'm a Hoosier Philly fan. I don't think she's going to win the Derby, but I think she's a lot more in the tank. What's Chop Chop's excuses been lately, especially last time?
No, I like Chop Chop in the juvenile, which she wound up going off the favorite. So that was a popular opinion, unfortunately, for everyone who had it. I like the switch back to Giroux because I think he's smart enough to be a little bit more aggressive and maybe not have to have this horse so far back like Rosario did. Rosario gave this horse a terrible ride in the juvenile fillies. But I mean, you'd have to show something because, like you said, that last race, she should have won. She should have went by. The Alley's Look is a nice horse, but Chop Chop had the trip, was supposed to go by, ranged up like was going by, and then just hung, or the Alley's Look dug in. But either way, it just didn't sit right. So I can't see her passing Hoosier Philly unless something really bad goes wrong with Hoosier Philly's trip.
Yeah, now there is some more speed in this race. I think Pretty Mischievous is going to show some speed for Tyler. Tyler's usually a little more aggressive than Brian Hernandez. I think this horse is interesting. Just it's a tough spot for her. And then you have Miracle, who, listen, a Pletcher horse going off in a stake race at, I don't know about the 12-1, but probably like 8-9-1. She's a New York bred. This is a very interesting spot. I just don't know if she classes up. Although the scary thing we saw at Tampa Bay last week, she will have the lead, at least on paper. We saw Wonder Wheel couldn't get the job done. I guess my point is a loose on the lead horse is always dangerous, but
you never know.
I don't see it here. I don't equate Hoosier Philly with Wonder Wheel. I think Hoosier Philly is actually a much better horse, and will prove that to everyone Saturday.
By the way, I do like, we didn't talk about her, but I actually like the 3 as my underneath. So if you're going to,
go ahead.
Philly's going to be a good chalk. I like this 3. I think the 3's races have been impressive. Just has happened to ran into Hoosier Philly, who got away. But actually, if you look at the race, Knock Your Socks Off ran a really nice race with not the greatest and easiest of trips. 2 back with Pratt, lost a Delight. And again, this horse broke badly out of the gate. The pace was super slow. Delight's a good horse, was especially on the lead, uncontested, and just got away. But this horse ran great to sort of get second after a pretty rough trip. And even the 1-3 back, lost the Chop Chop. And now we're back on the turf. Now on the dirt, I think if this one could take a step forward, you're picking Pratt back up again. If you can get double digits underneath, if you want to just do like a cold exacta and toss the other lower priced horses, I'll take that one. I don't think she could win again unless all hell breaks loose, but I'd have her as a B, or like a single B or a C or something, just in case. Because I mean, if you can beat Hoosier Philly, then your ticket's going through the roof pretty much.
Bitters, I don't want to get into an argument with you, Bittersweet, who said that Wonder Wheel studied. It was a very slight study, and Wonder Wheel had 0 excuses last week. I don't want to go there, Pete, because I'll start getting upset because she hung like a chandelier. So I know she needed the race, whatever. Give me a freaking break. Anyway, and Tyler took her into the 6th path for no reason and was hand riding her on the.
You're supposed to win that race if you're Wonder Wheel. You're supposed to win that race if you're either one of those horses, actually.
Nah, for sure. All right, Pete, let's go to the big one. The Risen Star. This is the one, the prep for the Kentucky Derby. There's 14 horses in this race. It's very important. It's 50 points for the Kentucky Derby. Whoever wins this race, guys, is going to the Derby unless they get injured. They're going to have the points. $400,000, a mile and an eighth. They've changed the distance over the years, which I like, Pete. They're stretching them out sooner. You see, it's a huge field here, huge field. The morning line favors the number 13, Victory Formation for Cox and Pratt. You and I are both going with the same horse, actually, in this big field, and that is the number 8, which I'm going to show on the screen right now. Tappett's Conquest for Cox and Drew, as we mentioned earlier. LaPenta 6-1 morning line.
Yeah, I think you might like this one a little more. Do you want to? Why don't you start on this one? I think you like this horse, don't you?
So
why don't
very,
you start
very quickly,
and I'll see. Yeah.
My backup future bet for the Derby is this horse. I know Matt Bernier also likes this horse. He's mentioned on his shows. I'll talk about him very briefly. He's done nothing wrong in 3 starts. Let me go full screen. He's done nothing wrong in 3 starts. Last time, Pete, and again, I recommend everyone watch the replay, which you can do on many different platforms, Twin Spires, the new Naira Bets. He did save ground the whole way. It was a very slow pace. He had a ton of run. He was stuck on the inside. He had nowhere to go, and he galloped out like an absolute train. And if people want to make fun of gallop outs, go ahead, but watch the replay, Pete. This horse had so much more to give. It's silly. I love the connections. He's been working well. He's got to work out a trip. It's a 14-horse field. I think this horse has as much upside and chance to win as anyone in this field. I'd love to get 6-1. I think I might get it. I really don't know how they're going to bet this race. This is my top choice.
This race is wide open. I sort of agree with everything you said. I worry. I didn't know. It was hard to tell because of the trip. I couldn't tell if this horse maybe's got a little bit of a grinder quality in some respects. Maybe the gallop out maybe dispels that a bit, but that was my concern. Determinedly is not a horse that I love. I thought this horse actually still could have won that race, even though it was squeezing up the inside. But I feel like there is room for improvement here. The one thing the 2 back, that win was okay on paper. The field was garbage. So I don't know how much you can take from that. But again, I like the price. I think if Victory Formation maybe drew a little bit better, he'd be tough in this field. The 13 could be problematic, although he's pretty fast. So I think he's still going to get the lead without much trouble. It's funny. I had a stat on Cox Giroux real quick on Tappett's Conquest. 43% wins, 81% in the money, graded stakes on dirt at Fairgrounds, those 2. So if nothing else, Tappett's Conquest, at least based on those, is going to be in that top 3 if you like any prices with it. But I mean, I don't know. The 13, you can't really say there's no knocks at all against this horse. The breeding isn't that bad. The only thing is maybe if you don't like the post, it's got Pratt again. He wins. His buyers have improved every race. I feel like there's a little bit of more speed in here to contend with. So maybe if some other speed goes and he tries to come over and can't make it and gets hung wide, maybe on both turns, that could be problematic. But there's not a lot of knocks against this horse in any way. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I have nothing
good
to
horse.
knock. It's just, and I'm not really concerned about the wide post. It's a long run, but there is other speed in the race. He's got to go an extra 8th. He's going to be 5-2. I think he's a bad win bet. He's very talented. I've nothing negative to say. I just don't like the price he's going to be. And it's a tough post. So I don't think he has to win. There's a lot of other speed. We could talk about this race for half an hour. We don't have the time for that. We're both interested in number 6, Angel of Empire. I've got him 2nd. You've got him 3rd. This is another Cox horse for Saez, who also really hasn't done much wrong except the turf race, which you can toss out. Had no chance against Victory Formation last time, who basically walked the dog, but closed well. This is a classic Empire. I think this horse can improve at a big number, Pete.
I was this close to putting this horse on top.
I don't blame you.
And I sort of, honestly, the 3 of them for me were all, I didn't want to go with the favorite because of the post a little bit or just because of the other speed. I was this close. It was between sort of the 6 and the 8. And I just thought the 8 maybe has a little more obvious upside, but I like this horse. I really liked that race last time because like you said, ran sort of a winning race and demolished the rest of the field. It's just a Victory Formation just had the jump and had the trip and just got away. And you can't catch a good horse when they get away like that. But I think this one has some upside. I like some of the things Cox said because I had my top 3 choices are all Cox. I actually I read an article about him talking about this race and I like some of what he said. And I love coming back off a few months, turns 3, pops an 85 buyer, chasing a really good horse. I think picking up Saez, maybe a little more aggressive this time. I like this horse. I think he can actually win the race.
I think he can. Jim Pilar is mentioning that Brad Cox is the Baffert of Louisiana. Well, Jim, he is this Saturday. He's got 25 of the future Derby horses in the betting. I mean, Cox's barn is absolutely loaded. And just to close out our thoughts here, it's another reason I like Sun Thunder, who had no chance against Arabian Night, no chance at all on a sloppy track, made a middle move and flattened out. Has been working really well. You don't think McPeak can get a winner home? You better be careful. I'm using this horse, Pete, as a B plus, maybe even A, depending on my ticket. I just think there's a lot of speed or enough speed in this race. They're going a mile and eighth, Pete. That's a huge difference from a mile, and even a mile and 16th. It's a long stretch. This race in general has been won by horses that have the lead or been stalking. I will say that. My gut feeling tells me that's not going to be the case on Saturday. I'm using more than half the field in my pick.
Oh, I got a bunch. Yeah,
It's a tough race.
It's a tough race. We had talked yesterday about we haven't seen a sort of a signature performance in the Derby preps yet. Maybe we'll get one here, but I like just the evenness and the parity of this race. One real quick, we don't have the horse, but the 5, just to mention, that's the first horse that's left the Baffert barn. Went to Asmussen.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Just
Harlow
real quick
cap.
because of that one. Yeah, I didn't have the horse in. I just couldn't. I couldn't get it. And Justify is a weird one to me. So I looked anything over sort of a mile. So his stats don't look that bad routing. But if you go over a mile, he's 2 for 21. Funny thing is, this is one of the two. This was one of the 2 wins. So maybe this is the one that's bucking the trends. The buyers are improving, but just broke the maiden. It's a tough spot. You're switching trainers. You're going from Baffert. You're coming west to east, or east, south, east, and then it's a lot going on here. And I did have Asmussen was 1 for 20 first after a trainer switch in graded stakes, which is always tough to do, especially with you're just a maiden winner. So there was just too much. I think it's just a tough spot for this horse. But I wanted to mention just because it's the first one moving from the Baffert barn on the Derby Trail.
Yeah, and with Asmussen, and I'm using him. He's solid speed. All right, let's get to. Okay, sorry. So if Tony, I think Tony Rowell can hear us in the background. Kelsey was fine, Tony. I saw her on the screen. Tell Kelsey to come back on as she was. She's on back now. So Kelsey Danner, if you can hear us, we hear you. You're all good. We're just finishing our show. So stay where you are, Kelsey Danner, who's waiting in the green room patiently. Everything is all good, Kelsey. Again, new people to the show, Pete. The technology is a little bit unusual. People don't know the green room in the background is right. There's a lot of people waiting. All right, Pete, here we go. $100 using it all. I don't blame you. Pete's pick 5, 8, 9 with 3, 6, 7, 8 with 1, 2, 4, 6, 8 with 2 with 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. Your single here is going to be Hoosier Philly, and you're going light early, light in the first race, hoping you get through that sprint race. And if you do, you've got a great shot to cash here.
Yeah, I won't go too long. Hoosier Philly was the obvious single if you want to single a horse. The Risen Star to me, like we said, is sort of wide open, so I wanted to be pretty covered there. The one you're worried about is the first race. I went with Surveillance and Evan Singh, who just got in. Again, when you're relying on a closer, but I have Surveillance who should be closer and hopefully takes to the turf. And then those 2, the second and third leg, I didn't have like a huge, strong opinion, so I went a little bit deeper. But this is the ticket where I'm hoping if I can get to Hoosier Philly, if you can get through the first 3, then you're like, well, I got, potentially the best filly in the country, and then I'm 5 deep in the big race. You're feeling pretty good at that point.
Absolutely. And those of you that are waiting, in just literally about 3 minutes, we're going to be bringing on the Crowns Way Racing people and Kelsey Danner, a fantastic trainer who, by the way, won a race today, Pete, which is very exciting, which helped me at
Kelsey.
Gulfstream.
Congrats.
We'll talk to her about that horse a little bit as well. And we're going to talk about horse racing ownership opportunity in just a few minutes. Here's Paul's ticket, just out of respect to Paul, who sent it. Those of you that want to use Paul Halloran's ticket, 1-8 with 1-6-7 with 1-2-4 with 2-4 with 8, 9, 10, 12, 13. He's not singling anyone. There's his $90 ticket. Pete, we don't have time for the guessing game, but you probably wouldn't guess right because I would set you up to fail because I'm not singling 0 horses and I'm not singling 1 horse. I'm actually singling 2 races in my ticket for the first time, I think, on this show. There's my ticket, $96. I'm going 1, 3, 7, 9, 10, 13. Again, some of those horses might not get in, though. So adjustments will be made with 1, 3, 5, 6, with 2. With 2 again. With 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13. Pete, to me, Hoosier Philly, I'm going to single. I'm not going to mess around there. And I'm going to single 2 Emmys because, to me, if it's not 2 Emmys, you have to use 3, 4, 5 others. I think he's logical. He's the I'm less confident with two Emmys than I am with Hoosier Philly, but I have to spread in the last race and the first race. Even if the 10 and 13 aren't in that first leg, Pete, I still have to spread. So I'm spreading on the bookends, going lighter in the middle. If I can get two singles home, which I think are both very likely, I can get some bombs on the ends there and hopefully
I
cash
like
on
it.
a big ticket. Pete, any final thoughts for the viewers for Fairgrounds or anything else in your world you want to share before we talk to our wonderful Crownsway people?
No, I'll just say it's an awesome sequence. I think everybody should enjoy it and watch. And if just as a reminder, if you're looking to play the carryover at Aqueduct tomorrow, Howard and I did a show on that yesterday. Not
Yeah.
exactly the quality of this sequence in terms of the horses, but still, it's a big carryover. If you want to jump into it, check out our pod from last night.
Yeah.
We at least tried to cover the mess as much as possible.
Yeah, episode 230. There's a huge carryover tomorrow, Friday at Aqueduct. It's the first five, not the last five. So
Yep.
you definitely want to go for that. Pete Visco, we really appreciate it, man. Good luck with all your bets. Awesome job tonight. Have a great weekend. Thanks a lot, Pete.
See you, everybody. Good
All
luck.
right, take care. All right, that was Pete Visco. Now, ladies and gentlemen, very excited. We have a new sponsor as of last month. We've been talking about Crownsway Racing quite a bit in the last 6 weeks. We already did a segment with them. Tonight is our second special segment. So without further ado, I'm very excited to bring on, actually for the third time, he came on for a very brief period for a second time, but for the third time to talk about an awesome syndicate that you need to get involved in, and you can do it at a very low price. Let's bring in the president of Crownsway Racing, Mr. Tony Rollo. Tony, how you doing tonight?
Hey, Howard, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I got to switch the banners here so we can show some love here with Crownsway. Give me 2 seconds here. There we go. There's Crownsway in the background. Tony, we got lots to talk about, so let's just jump right in. And I'm going to go ahead and bring on Kelsey right now so she's not waiting. One of the fantastic trainers, Tony, that you have with Crownsway Racing is Kelsey Danner. I cannot say enough good things about Kelsey. I have not had the chance to meet her personally until tonight. So let's bring her on right now. Very successful trainer. To say underrated is not fair, but if you're not paying attention to handicapping and horse racing, you're losing money not betting. Kelsey Danner. Let's bring her on right now. Very successful trainer and winning trainer from Gulfstream Park today, Miss Kelsey Danner. Kelsey, thanks for joining the show. How you doing tonight?
Hi guys. Hi guys.
Doing good. Thanks, Kelsey. Congratulations on your win today. I have that horse singled in the pick 5, and Irad gave that horse a great ride. Why don't you really quickly talk about the horse that won today for you at Gulfstream?
See, my Meister usually gets too far out of it, so Irad did a great job getting him up in the race early, and he was kind of big class relief for him, so he did it pretty easily afterwards.
Yeah, you had him ready. How do you feel about the Tapeta in general? I know that wasn't one of the topics we were in discuss, but obviously the Tapeta is not the same as the turf, but many turf horses can obviously handle the Tapeta, correct?
Yeah, this was actually the first time that Meister showed that he liked it. His previous starts on the Tapeta were not very good, but I needed a little bit longer distance than what the turf showed us. So the Tapeta doesn't always transfer for turf horses.
Sure.
It kind of, I do think if they can handle the dirt a little bit in the morning times, they have a better shot with the Tapeta.
Absolutely. All right, Tony. Now, Kelsey's had many fantastic wins for you. Let's first talk about the 2 big horses in the stable, Tony. And Kelsey, of course, feel free to expound on anything you'd like. Smokin' Jay and Otago right now. Let's talk about Smokin' Jay first. Now, I'm a big fan of Smokin' Jay. Of course, one of our co-hosts, Kelsey, Kyle Roscoe, who's a partner, who I'm not sure if you, I think you know he is. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but we've watched many races together. He was at the Belmont Stakes last year, and so we were excited to see Smokin' Jay run in the Jaipur. This is a talented horse. He's won over $200,000. He's a turf sprinter. Coming off a layoff, how is Smokin' Jay doing? And I know he's had several works, and I just noticed he had a bullet work this past weekend in Florida.
He's doing really well. He was almost ready to make the sprint race this weekend. I decided to wait, and we're going to go it for the allowance race the first part of March at Gulfstream. His breezes, the one the other day, we kind of let him go, and he obviously had a bullet breeze. He's quick. and he's came off the layoff great. He looks fantastic, ready to go. So,
And people can, I don't know if you can see the screen, Kelsey, but it's pretty
yeah,
big there. He's been involved in some very tough races, obviously the Jaipur, but he's won.
yeah.
He's been in black type. He's been in graded stakes. He won the Janus. Excuse me. No, he didn't win. He won the Allied Forces, excuse me, at Belmont with a 99 Equibase number. What's his schedule for this year? What are your plans with him?
We kind of want to get off the board and get the allowance race, and then probably going to have to go back up to Kentucky or New York to run a stake. So hopefully the allowance will go here, and then we can kind of go from there.
Tony, talk about the job that Kelsey has done with with Smoke and Jay, and then we'll talk about Otago.
I think she's done a fantastic job with him. She's very good with turf sprinters. She's been good with everything, but she has very good stats with turf sprinters. And Carlos had him as a 2-year-old, and then when Carlos kind of COVID was going on, he kind of took a little step back, and Kelsey got Smoke and Jay, and it turned out just to be a blessing. She's been really good with him. We both got our first stakes win with him, and I just got back from Florida, and I think he's doing excellent. I saw him about a bunch the last 2 weeks, so I'm very happy with how he's doing right now.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what he can do. And let's talk about Kelsey now. For those of you that are watching and are new to the show, or if you're not new to the show and you're not familiar with Crown's Way, we're going to talk about Series E, Tony, in just a minute. But you can get into Crown's Way Racing for only $500 minimum. And Tony Rallo, the president of Crown's Way, you see on the screen there, will be talking about Series E, which Kelsey's, is a mix of claimers and 2-year-olds. That you're going to be buying, or some other horses. Kelsey, you have a lot to do with the younger horses in the barn, and in the syndicate. I've had some great trainers on the show in the past. We've talked to Todd Pletcher, Chad Brown. We've talked to Miguel Clement, of course, son of Christoph. Kelsey, what is the key to training younger horses in particular? Because you have a great track record with 2-year-olds.
Just letting them develop at their own speed. Each horse develops differently, and just letting them try to be the best they can be. And sometimes that's as their 2-year-old year, or it might be their 3-year-old year, or as sometimes maybe 4-year-old year, but just letting them develop at their own speed.
Yeah, patience is, and now I'm a new owner as of about a year and a half ago, Kelsey, and bought some yearlings at the time, or a partial buy. And I've learned that this game, I knew it before because I've been a handicapper for 30 years, Kelsey, but as an owner, it's a whole other situation. The horses are going to have their little, their little nicks and knacks, and things are going to happen around the barn and on the track. And you really do have to be patient. I have so much respect for trainers like yourself, Kelsey, that do what's best for the horse, because the partners and maybe even the president sometimes, let's run, right? But you got to be patient, and patience will always pay off in the long run with these younger horses, correct?
Yeah, patience. It's difficult to come by, but patience is what you kind of have to have. Crown's Way has always been great. I mean, with Smoke and Jay, he had some hiccups and things like that, and whatever was best for the horse. So, and they never complained about it once.
Absolutely. Tony, I'm going to show some stats here for Kelsey Dana. This is from Equibase. And Kelsey, I'm a math teacher, by the way. I'm a full-time high school math teacher. But you do not have to be a math teacher to understand this is good, Tony. She's just getting better every single year. Last year, look at these earnings for Kelsey Danner. Over $2 million in earnings already. Kelsey, I believe you're 4 wins now, I believe, at Gulfstream Park in 19 starts. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. But I think I saw 3 for 18 before today or something like that. Tony, please tell everyone at home who's interested in buying into your fantastic partnership why Kelsey Danner is a great trainer to have for an owner.
Just what she said. She takes the right amount of time with the horses. Sometimes if I get a little, I want to run, she'll set me straight when I'm needed to be. And, you can tell a lot by a trainer. I think I said this last time, from the clientele they have. And a lot of people that I respect also send horses to Kelsey. So, you could tell that it's a reputable trainer.
No, Kelsey does a great job. Kelsey, I know that you're very busy and we were a few minutes late, so I apologize. I know you're going to get up at God only knows in the time in the morning, but is there anything you'd like to say before we let you go about Tony Rallo specifically, or about Crownsway Racing and your relationship with this fantastic partnership?
I think it's a good group for people to get involved in. It's a fun group. They have a lot of activities, and the horses, from claimers to stakes horses, there's a broad range. And like I said, they do right by the horse all the time. And I think everything's pretty straightforward on what you have. And it seems like the same people keep coming back. So that's always a good thing. So.
Oh, definitely a good thing. Tony, any final thoughts for Kelsey, or anything you all want to say about Kelsey before we let her go for the night?
Well, I appreciate her coming on. I know it's a late post time with the morning training coming up quick, but appreciate her taking the time and helping out Crownsway.
So real quick about Otago, I'm sorry, I don't want to give Otago short shrift. I know we forgot, who had a very nice 2-year-old year. Talk a little bit about Otago, Kelsey, and then we'll let you go.
Otago's coming back. He breathes the other day. He's probably going to target the Florida Bred Stake at the end of March at Tampa, the sophomore turf. Big strapping colt, physically. He's got everything right there. So he just has to mature a little bit and hopefully improve off of having the little vacation. So
I was watching the race at Laurel with Kyle Roscoe, one of the partners, and we were very excited at the top of the stretch. Just got beat there. I think Ruin is the horse that, if I recall, I think that's the name. But Otago ran big at Laurel. One question for you, Kelsey. We've got a lot of people watching, listening. If you don't mind, take a question from Dean G. Dean G, thanks for joining the show. It's at the bottom of the screen, Kelsey. Did you work for Carl Nafsker? And whether you did or did not, do you have any good learning experiences as you were coming up as a trainer that you want to share?
I did work for Carl Nasker. Very interesting guy. He does things very different from your typical trainers. Does a lot of acupuncture, chiropractic. He uses a lot of pressure points. Carl also, is a cowboy. So you have a little bit of that into him, but he's a good horseman. And talking about letting horses develop, I mean, he lets them come around at whatever time they want, and it's never a rush with him. So,
yeah, trainer of the wonderful Unbridled, who won the Kentucky Derby. One of my best earlier memories as a horse racing fan, when he turned to the owner and said, "You won the Kentucky Derby." She was 90. It was an incredible experience. We all got. Kelsey, thank you very much for coming on to the HHH Racing Podcast. When we have more time, and perhaps at an earlier hour, we'd love to talk to you more. Really appreciate it. Good luck the rest of the spring here and the rest of the year with your 2 superstars in the barn. Take care, Kelsey.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, Tony Rallo. I can't say enough good things about Kelsey. Really appreciate her coming on. She can train flat out, Tony.
Carl Nasker is just one of the names that she's worked for, but if you look down the line, there's Dean Wayne Lucas, Wayne Catalano, and she's 3rd generation horseman, so there's a lot of pedigree there.
No, she's fantastic. Now, I started doing something on the screen. We have someone else to talk about with Crownsway. There's one other trainer that we need to mention, and this gentleman does a fantastic job. He could not be on with us tonight, so we did the next best thing, Tony. Before I show an interview, we're going to show an interview from Scott Hazelton, who knows the next trainer we're going to talk about very well. Of course, Scott Hazelton on TVG. I knew I was going to do it once. On FanDuel, Keyland. Talk a little bit about Carlos Silva, who's the other trainer that you use, who does a fantastic job with your claiming horses.
So Carlos was our original trainer when we started Crownsway. We've had horses with him now since the inception of Crownsway. He's been a fixture for Crownsway for a long time, dating back when I was a little kid. He was riding First Call for my uncle. So when I was a kid, my 2 sports heroes were Frank Thomas and Carlos Silva. So he probably wouldn't like me dating him that much, but that's just a fact. And then after he worked for my uncle, stopped riding for my uncle, he started riding First Call for Mr. Hazelton, and that's where the relationship with Scotty was developed. And excellent horseman, works hard, smaller stable, does a lot. He's very hands-on as far as he'll do whatever needed to be done in the barn. He'll act as a groom if necessary, but excellent trainer. Doesn't get enough respect, but has a lot of smaller clients that were dealing with a couple horses and had a huge season in Indiana last year for us.
Now he's fantastic. Now here's what we're gonna do, everyone that's listening, that's watching and listening live. I have a 15 minute interview with Scott Hazelton about Carlos Silva, the trainer. He's also a fantastic jockey. So after the 15-minute interview, Tony, we're gonna come back, you and I, and close out the show. But it is extremely important that all of you that are either watching or listening as live or as a replay, you hang on after the interview, because Tony's going to talk about Series E, which is the specific way that you can get involved from an ownership standpoint with the Crowns Way Racing. So bear with us for 15 minutes. It's a very good interview, a taped interview with Scott Hazelton from FanDuel. And then we'll come back and we will tell you at home how you can be the next stakes winning owner with Crowns Way Racing. So let me go ahead and queue up here the interview with Scott Hazelton. Give me just 1 second here, everyone. And here we go. Please enjoy the interview with Scott Hazelton from FanDuel. We are now joined with a special guest. He is the gentleman who is on FanDuel as a paddock host, analyst. He also works for Keelan Racecourse in their sales and a paddock host as well. He's been on this show a few times, and we're happy to have him on again from New Orleans, covering the Risen Star Stakes and many other things. Mr. Scott Hazelton. Scott, how you doing tonight?
Everything's great, Howard. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm glad travel went well. Before we get into Crowns Way Racing and your relationship with the fantastic trainer for Crowns Way, Carlos Silva, of course, you're in New Orleans. Do you have a Derby horse yet? Have you looked at the Risen Star Stakes field? Everyone's starting to get that Derby fever now.
Yeah, I'm not quite ready to jump on a Derby horse just yet. I think Arabian Night is, at the top of the most list, and I wouldn't sit here and talk anybody off of them. But we still have, I don't want to say a long ways to go, but still some key steps, obviously, before we get to that first Saturday in May. And so much of it has to do with not only how they perform, but how they train going into the monoquarter test that they'll have there at Churchill Downs. But the Risen Star, I mean, this 13 race card, I can't think of another card that we've had so far this year that is as good as this. This is so far, in my opinion, in the early days of 2023, the best betting card, most competitive card, best depth to it that we have had in racing in North America. And that's at Fairgrounds, Risen Star Day. And the Risen Star culminates as race number 13 on that Saturday, or this Saturday, I should say. And it's as wide open as of a race that you'll find this entire lead up to the Kentucky Derby, truthfully. I mean, two Phils, love the Chicago connections, gotten to know the ownership group there. Obviously, Larry Ravelli, somebody that I've known for a vast majority of my life. He put together a big effort in Lecomte. We saw last year Epicenter respond with a step forward off of his Lecomte defeat and roll through the rest of the series there in Louisiana. I don't know that I'm quite to that point to really put them on the same level, but just for perspective, horses can move forward off of defeats, and maybe Two Phils is able to do that. It's a very good race. Steve Asmussen's represented. You've got Tom Amos with Curly Jack. He's got his big filly running on the undercard in Hoosier Philly. So there's a lot to look forward to. And I'm looking forward to seeing how Private Creed handles the dirt off of those turf runs. I think that he's one that is very, very interesting. He's a stunning colt, and he's a big, good-looking colt as well. I don't think that the move to dirt should bother him at all with that pedigree that he has, son of Jimmy Creed.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. We already previewed the Risen Star here, of course, before you came on. I like Tappett's Conquest quite a bit. I think he's fascinating. I actually spoke about on the show. I put a Derby future on him, but I'm not really a Derby future guy. So anyway, it's a lot of ways to go in the Risen Star. But what we're really here to do tonight, Scott, as you well, is talk about Carlos Silva, who's a fantastic trainer, former rider, as you know very well. And now, of course, he works for Tony Rallo and Crowns Way Racing. So my first question is, how and when did you first meet Carlos Silva?
Gosh, it was decades ago now when he became my father's first call rider in the last 10, 20 years of my father's career. If timing is coming to me correctly, I believe it was somewhere in the 90s. that they teamed up. And Carlos, I was still a fairly young man at that point in time, approaching my teenage years. But it feels like I've known Carlos my entire life, and that's the truth. And Carlos is one of those individuals that once you get a chance to meet him and you meet his family is led by his wife, Ide. She's just one of the sweetest people that you ever meet. They're just class. And, my father was a no BS type of person. And I think that if you speak to anybody that knew my dad for 5 minutes or 50 years, they would say that. And the fact that my dad stuck with Carlos for as long as he did until the very end of my father's training career just speaks volumes to Carlos as a person, as a rider. And one of the things that I can remember in all the times of being there at the various racetracks in the Chicagoland area, especially Arlington Park and Hawthorne Racecourse when Carlos was riding for my dad, Richard, I never saw him give Carlos instructions, and I never saw him go down there after the race and have to have a discussion with Carlos. It was just one of those. It's just they fed off of each other. They knew each other that well. Carlos knew what it was expected of him, and I think my father didn't have to go and be vocal towards Carlos because they just were on the same page all the time. So, and I was looking at the stats earlier this evening with Carlos Silva, over 3,000 races, and some of the biggest, as far as money earned horses that he rode, were for my father. Classic Appeal at the top of that list, and he was a tremendous Illinois bred from back at that beginning of that run that they had. So Carlos is a great man, great family man, and he's transitioned into a trainer. And I'd like to say that he's carrying on the legacy of my father in many ways in that aspect, because I think that he would say too that he probably learned a good chunk of what he does from the firsthand experience that he had with my father for all those years.
Yeah, no, he's a terrific horse. And what'd you see? What characteristics describe him best? What'd you see early on when he was riding for your father that said this guy is not just a rider, but a true horseman?
Well, I think just to what I said, the fact that him and my father were always on the same page, because, I think my father had certain expectations, and, whether it was coming out and working horses in the morning, and that was a big chunk of it, being part of that team, not just showing up and riding horses in the afternoon, but being part of the team when needed, at the early mornings and things of that nature. And Carlos was always willing to be there, and always was there, and knew that. And he was, pushed all of it aside, even though when him and my father came together, Carlos had already made a name for himself. I mean, Carlos was a known rider, very well-known rider in the Chicagoland circuit for a number of years before they started to team up. Carlos Hi-Ho Silva, as he'd be introduced when he'd come back to the winner's circle. But, once they came together, I think, any egos were pushed aside and things of that nature. And the other aspect of it too is that, all of that aside, our family spent a lot of time together. And that's another aspect of it. There was a lot of people in the racing world, especially obviously growing up, saw them at the track, didn't necessarily see them away from the racetrack. That wasn't the case with my father, Carlos Silva, and his wife, Ide. Our family spent a lot of time together away from the racetrack, and my late mother as well, with Carlos's wife. So it was, it was more than just a business for the two families, for the Hazeltons and the Silvas alike.
Carlos had 3,515 wins as a jockey, close to 60 million in career earnings. I did not realize it was that much. That's really impressive. Now he's transitioned to a fantastic trainer. He's a 13% trainer, 46% in the money. Obviously, you know a lot about horse racing and training, especially due to being around the sport and your father, etc. What do you attribute his success as a trainer? Is it the same as when he was riding, or there are obviously big difference between a rider and a trainer? You have to make some adjustments, but your personality stays the same. Your work ethic stays the same. What specifically about Carlos do you think makes him a successful trainer?
I think understanding where horses belong, and as far as races and levels. And that was one of the things that I think my dad was very, very good at. And he had the types of owners behind him that were willing to listen to him and be willing to take some risks as far as dropping horses in class to try to get wins. And I think that you see that with Carlos and Crown's Way. I mean, they had that filly that did so good for him at Keeneland back in the fall. I believe it was Judy's Way, if name
Judy's Way. They also tell me on a Sunday they had a few. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that, at one point in time, I kept track of her through the Keeneland meet. But at one point in time, I noticed on the Crown's Way Twitter that they had lost her through the claim box. And look, there come times where you have to risk horses and in dropping them in for a tag, and if you want to have success, because if you continue to put them in situations where they're in over their head, you're just spinning your wheels. And so I think for Carlos to have the right people behind him, like a Crown's Way Racing, being able to do that and separate, okay, we love this filly, she's done a lot of good for us, and we'd love to keep her for the rest of the time. And I'm sure that they'll do their best to make sure that she's well taken care of beyond her racing days. But look, we've got to drop her in class. And my dad did that, and he had the right people behind him that were willing to do that. ACL Stable, the Radke family out of Kansas, they had a big Illinois bred program, and they were that way. They would, they were very willing to take those risks in order to get the reward. And that's what it's about, not continuing to put your horses in over their head. And obviously the horsemanship goes a long way. And I think that, if you speak to Carlos, he would have a lot more to say about that than me, as far as learning the ins and outs of tinkering with horses and things of that nature, and what it takes to get them fit and get them ready to roll at any given stage of a calendar year.
And you sort of answered my next question, which was, we have a lot of hopeful prospective buyers, right, that are watching the show, that are interested in buying into a syndicate like Crown's Way. Is there anything other than you mentioned that would give people confidence to have Carlos Silva as your trainer? He's a very clean guy as well. They run a very clean stable, and it's a little bit of a smaller stable, which does have some advantages, right, Scott?
No doubt. I mean, you've got the hands-on aspect, and somebody who's going to be there every day, and he's around those horses all the time. I mean, that's what Carlos does. I know it. I've seen it here at Fairgrounds. I've seen the last couple of years that they've come down here, and the times that Carlos has taken horses to Keeneland Racecourse. So, he's been a friend for life, and he'll continue to be. And it's been a lot of fun to watch him, especially that Keeneland run. When he came in, I think he won 2 or 3 or something like that back in the fall. And even when the filly got beat near the end of the meet, she ran a big race. But it was great to see that. And, and also too, I think that shows you, for Carlos Silva, that he knows what types of horses can go from, say, Horseshoe Indianapolis in that instance down to Keeneland, which is one of the toughest race meets in the country any given point in the year. And it doesn't matter if it's in a grade 1 race or a $20,000 claimer. It's tough, but Carlos knew the types of horses that would work down there, and he got the results.
Well, and he spots those horses well, of course, as does the Crown's Way Racing. You see on the screen here for Equibase, Carlos Silva's overall earnings, very consistent. Of course, we all know here in 2020, 2021, that was COVID and everything, obviously fell apart a little bit, and there were a lot less races. But you see, he had over $500,000 earnings in 2022, one of his best years ever. And a lot of that is the success is due to Crown's Way Racing. When you see this on the page, Scott, consistency is so important in the training game and the jockey game. It's not easy to be this consistent.
No, and it just goes to not wasting a race. That, like I said, being willing to put them in the right spots to succeed, understanding what you have, and understanding where they belong in order to pick up checks and obviously win races. We're all in it for winning races, but there's a lot of money to be made picking up checks. And I think that I'm obviously very partial to my father, but I think those are things that those are traits that Carlos picked up with my father. And even guys like Gene Cilio. Carlos Silva and Gene Cilio were a tandem for a number of years as well, before him and my father took off, however many years it was. Like I said, I think it feels like it was 20 years. I'm not sure what the exact timetable of them being together was, but Carlos worked and rode for a lot of very good horsemen there in the Chicago area.
No, he's fantastic, and Crown's Way is very lucky to have him. Last question before we let you go, Scott, and we really do appreciate your time. And of course, you can check out Scott Hazelton on FanDuel this weekend down in New Orleans on Saturday for the fantastic Risen Stars Stakes program that we've already mentioned. Talk a little about managing partner Tony Rowell. Does a fantastic job with the Crown's Way. I know you've had a chance to meet him a few times. Really a gregarious guy, loves horse racing, and does a great job for his clients as well.
He does. And, he's another one that has a long-standing background in racing. I was speaking to him when we came across each other in Kentucky. And it just, pedigree goes a long way in this sport. And that's, I know it may seem obvious, but that's the truth. There's an advantage in having being around certain people in this sport. And Tony has picked up from that. And he was telling me that I believe it was his grandfather had some horses with Gene Cilio. So, you learn from that. And as much as, I just think it goes back to being reasonable, right? And just, learning to be reasonable, because I think a lot of times expectations are too high with particular horses and circumstances. And I think that you learn that when you're around it and when you're around success. And I think that's shown there with Tony. And this is not speaking poorly about trainers and owners and stuff that these are their babies, right? I mean, these are their investments. These are their sports teams. So you can understand why they want to hold on to these horses and keep them around as long as they possibly can, and rightfully so. But also, like I said before, you have to be willing to roll the dice a little bit. And I think that's what you've seen, especially with those statistics that you put up there with Carlos Silva just last season.
Well, Scott, we really do appreciate your time coming on. Wish you success this weekend, not only on television, perhaps with the betting windows and going forward, and best wishes to your family as well. We'll see you down the road on FanDuel quite a bit during this Kentucky Derby prep trail, won't we?
Yeah, we'll be here obviously this weekend, 13 race card. Looking forward to it. Join us on FanDuel TV. If you don't have FanDuel TV on your cable or satellite provider, download FanDuel TV Plus. It's on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV. Like I said, this card on Saturday, it's going to be tough to replicate outside of Derby Day, and I truly believe that. And I'm speaking Kentucky Derby Day. The depth of these races, the quality of these races, the odds are going to be so good. So make sure you join us. You fire up those TVG accounts on the TVG app, or even FanDuel Racing. We've got racing in the FanDuel Sportsbook as well for those lucky enough to live in states that have the ability to play on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Racing is available there, but join us on Saturday. Big day at Fairgrounds.
Terrific. Listen, he's a pro, guys. He's got all the promos already memorized in his head 72 hours in advance. Scott Hazelton, really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. Have a great night. Take care.
Anytime, Howard.
All right, Tony. That was Scott Hazelton, who does a great job on TV and said a lot of wonderful things about yourself and Carlos Silva, rightly so.
Yeah, Scotty's great. He's great to have speaking for Crowns Way and being out there and representing us. So I appreciate Scotty coming on.
All right. Now, we talked about all the wonderful things about Crowns Way. Now we're going to let the president talk. So we also have, if you have any questions for Tony about what we're about to discuss, we'll stay an extra few minutes, Tony. I'm sure you'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has. Series E is your sort of sales pitch coming up for people that are interested in buying into Crownsway Racing. We already talked about some of the wonderful successes Crownsway Racing has had. You've got fantastic trainers. You've got backing. You run all over the country, mainly where a lot of people are watching the show in the East, Southeast, Midwest, etc. Please, and we also were on, you can check out a show we had about a month ago. I'll tweet out the show number. I can't recall which one it was, but where we talked about Series E. But please give everyone the short version of Series E and how people can buy in for a minimum of $500 into claimers and 2-year-olds.
Okay, so Series E is a multi-horse group. So when you buy in, you don't just get one horse. You're going to get more than one. It's going to be split up between Carlos and Kelsey. Excited to work with them again. There will probably be a claiming horse with Carlos and a 2-year-old with Kelsey. Probably going to be partnered up with some of our past partners with Carlos and Kelsey. I imagine that we'll team up with the MBS Otago team again. And yeah, I mean, we're with Arlington gone, we're looking to go national, and we're starting to spread our wings a little bit. We won our first race at Keeneland last year. We won our first race at Churchill. Won our first race at Pimlico. So we're starting to expand, and we're going to be looking to win all over the country.
Tony, approximately how many horses will an owner have if they buy into Series E?
It will be at least 2. Could be more depending on how much money we raise. That's part of what we're kind of dealing with the transition right now. We were a Chicago-based syndicate. And now, with no Arlington and Hawthorne, still waiting on that casino, that we're starting to need to expand to people from other states. We base in Indiana in the summer, we base in the Mid-Atlantic, and we run all over the map.
Now, there's a question. This question came up actually a month ago when you were on. This question is from Jim Pillars at the bottom of the screen, a fantastic fan and viewer. The question, Tony, is if you buy into the partnership, do you need to be licensed? If no, is there a percentage of ownership that triggers licensing requirements?
That's a great question. Each state has different rules, but the rule of thumb usually in most states is 5%. If they own 5% of the horse, it will trigger having to be licensed. But also with, partnering up 50-50 on horses, people usually we try to keep people under that 5% threshold. Just becomes a lot to get everyone licensed, especially on short notice. If we decide, hey, we're going to run one in Maryland this week, who needs to get licensed? We usually do a lot of that through the Racing Compact in Kentucky.
And I know that we've talked about this before. On the bottom of the screen, you can see how to get in touch with you, because obviously a lot of people are interested. How do you get in touch with Tony? So on the bottom of the screen, there right now, there is your email. You also have Twitter, and you also have a great website, which people can just freeze on the bottom of the screen on their own time. You've updated the website. And so what's the best way to get in touch with you, Tony, for people that want to buy into the partnership?
The best way to probably get in touch with me would be through the Twitter or email. I check that every day. I know we had a little problem with someone's email went in my spam, but I'm checking my spam every day now as well to make sure I don't miss on anyone. But yeah, Twitter, email. If people want to check out the website, that was my own creation. So I apologize for any for poor functionality if that comes up, but so far so good. So hopefully that goes well. And, I wanted to shout out Jimmy Gulick and the Talking Tipsy team. We got our first win of 2023 this last year at the Gulfstream Championship meet, and hopefully we can keep it rolling now.
Nah, it's really cool. I'm trying to set up something here on the side if I can here as we're talking. Talk about your goals. One more question for you, and then I have a surprise that I'm trying to set up here on the side of the screen. The surprise will happen no matter if I can figure out the technology. But what are the goals for the stable this year? I know you've got Otago, of course, Smoking Jay. You got a lot of other horses. Tell me on a Sunday is a nice horse. Trafalgar Shore had a nice year last year as an Indiana bred for people that live in the Midwest and might want to see horses run at Horseshoe. What's the general goals for the stable, and what are you looking forward to most this year?
The goal is to continue being profitable. I don't think there's a lot of groups out there that are able to boast that they've been profitable, and we were profitable in 3 of our 4 groups last year. The one we weren't was due to an injury, and we retired and found that horse a good home, and that's almost as good as being profitable. But so we did sell Tell Me on a Sunday privately. She's going to the breeding shed. I think they're planning on breeding her to Epicenter, so that'll be exciting. Maybe we'll have to buy that one back in Series G or Series H when that comes around. But
sure.
Trafalgar Shore's back in training at Fairgrounds now with Carlos, and we'll be targeting her for the beginning of Indiana. Smoking Jay's coming up quick. Otago's coming up quick, and the big horses are coming back. Also, Richie's coming back. He's ready to run. We entered him in that Tampa turf stake for Saturday that overfilled. He did not draw in, so we'll get a couple more works into him, and then he'll be ready to go again as well.
It's incredibly exciting. Here's how I want to end the show, Tony. I have an announcement, and I have a surprise, and Tony does not know about this at all. Tony, I want to bring something up on the screen. This is real. This is not a stunt at all whatsoever, but I have faith in you. I have faith in Kelsey Danner. I have faith in Carlos Silva. Let me bring it up on the screen right now. Hold on just 1 second. It's going to come up right now. And all right, here it is, Tony. Here's my check. Here's my check. This is real, folks. This is legit. Here's my check to Crowns Way Racing, Tony. I'd like to announce to the world I'd like to officially become a partner of Crowns Way Racing. How much should I make the check for?
Whatever you're comfortable with, Howard. I don't like to tell people how to spend their money, but it's a good as investment as you can get in horse racing, and we're excited to bring you on as part of the team.
Absolutely. Put it in the chat. How much should I buy in the Crown? Now, does it have to be $500 increments, Tony? So 500 is the starting point. So it's either 500, 1,000, 10,000, whatever. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
I think a nice down 10 shares might be nice.
10 shares, the $5,000. You know, I did have a very good day today, which we'll talk about off air. But Kelsey helped me have that good day because I singled her horse and actually hit both pick fives today, which they didn't pay anything crazy, but it was a real good day for me, which doesn't always happen in this game. Tony Rowell, you and I will talk, sir, about becoming an official partner, and I will fill out that check and send it to you. Tony, as we close out the show, we really appreciate you coming on again. We're going to do some more promotions this month, just some reads and whatnot. I'm not sure if your face will be on the rest of the month. Any closing thoughts for the people watching about Crowns Way Racing?
What I'd like to say is it's a great game, and I think we do a good job exposing new people to the game and giving them the best experience possible. We encourage our partners to come out to the track and come to any race they can get them to. And me and you will have to be taking a ride to Horseshoe, Indiana this year, go see our new horse.
It's exciting. I've actually had John G. Dooley on the show a few times, and Brian Aragoni I know well. He's been on the show, and I've actually met him at Canterbury. Of course, he's the paddock analyst, for those who don't know who. So I have some connections to Horseshoe. We can have some fun down there, Tony, and perhaps we have a beverage somehow as well on our travels. Tony, I'm going to leave you on the screen.
Boozin live.
I'm sorry?
So maybe we'll have to do a Bettin and Boozin live and get Kyle with us.
There you go. That sounds like fun. Tony, you're awesome, man. I'm going to leave you on the screen here to end the show. For my co-host, Pete Visco, for Kelsey Danner, for Scott Hazelton, and for president of Crowns Way Racing, Tony Rowell. This has been episode 231 of the HHH Racing Podcast. We wish everyone good luck with your bets on Saturday for Risen Star Stakes, and get in touch with Tony Rowell and buy, just like me, into Crowns Way Racing, and we become a team and a partnership. Have a great night, everyone. Take care.
Thanks,
good night.
Howard.
If you have not followed his Triple H Horse Racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.